Ever imagine Jesus running a school?
A school?
Yeah, like a real school.
Huh.
Well, that's where our deep dive takes us today. First century Galilee, with Jesus leading a 5-month training camp for evangelists.
5 months? That's a long time. I guess you could call that a school of sorts.
Right, and it's all detailed in the Urantia Book, paper 148.
Okay, I'm with you. So what's so special about this school?
Well, for starters, it wasn't just a handful of followers. We're talking 500 to 1,500 people at any given time, all gathered at this lakeside encampment, seeking teachings, healing, wanting to be close to Jesus.
Wow, 1,500 people. That's like a small town springing up overnight.
Exactly. And think about the logistics. The food, the lodging.
They must have had some system in place.
Oh, they did. The text even mentions sanitation systems.
Wow, organized. A first-century pop-up community. It really makes you think about the effort involved in spreading a message back then.
Right. And speaking of organization, get this. The encampment housed a formal school for evangelists.
A school within a school.
Pretty much. And guess who was in charge?
Let me guess. Peter.
You got it. Peter leading the charge with over 100 students eager to learn.
Over 100 students. That's incredible. But I have to ask, what kind of students were they? Were they all priests? Scholars?
Actually, no. That's what's so interesting. The text emphasizes their diverse backgrounds.
Diverse how?
They came from all walks of life, different experiences, perspectives, the whole spectrum. And this wasn't about churning out cookie-cutter preachers.
There's no standardized dogma. That's pretty surprising, especially for a religious movement.
I know, right? The text actually says each apostle had their own style of teaching the Gospels. Imagine Peter, fiery personality that he was, probably had a very different approach compared to, say, John.
Yeah, John was more mystical, poetic in his teachings. Imagine those lectures. So with all these different takes on the Gospels flying around, how do they keep things harmonious?
That's where Jesus steps in.
Oh, I bet. Keeping everyone in line.
Exactly. The text portrays him as a facilitator, making sure everyone felt heard, respected, even if their views differed. He actually held weekly meetings.
Really? What for?
To address any conflicting interpretations or lingering questions about the teachings, basically ironing out any wrinkles.
So Jesus, the original moderator, long before comment sections and online forums, that's a fascinating glimpse into early leadership. But hold on, amidst all this teaching, spiritual stuff, there's something else going on in this encampment that caught my eye.
What's that?
Healthcare. The text mentions an infirmary.
An infirmary, like a hospital.
It seems so. And it was overseen by a Syrian physician named Elman.
Interesting. So they had spiritual healing and a real medical facility all in one place.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's this fascinating juxtaposition. You have people drawn to Jesus for healing, believing in his powers, but at the same time, there's a functioning medical facility using all the known treatments of the time.
Almost like a holistic approach to well-being, taking care of both body and soul. And it wasn't just a small operation either. The infirmary treated over 1,000 people.
Wow, over 1,000. This encampment was the real deal.
That's a lot of people seeking healing one way or another.
It really makes you think about the power of belief back then. They didn't have all the medical knowledge we have today, so for many, their faith in Jesus was their strongest medicine.
And you know, the text does suggest that some healings might have been tied to transformations of mind and spirit. It's not necessarily discounting Elman's work, but pointing to another layer of influence.
Why? Like maybe a shift in perspective, a release from fear or anxiety, a surge of hope brought on by being in Jesus' presence. All things that could have tangible effects on someone's health.
It's fascinating, especially now as we learn more about the mind-body connection, the placebo effect. But while Jesus was clearly a busy guy, healing, teaching, the text also mentions him seeking solitude.
Solitude? Why? You'd think he'd be exhausted.
You'd think so, right? But it seems he needed those moments to attend to what he called the Father's business.
Okay, now that's intriguing. The Father's business.
Yeah.
It sounds like something beyond his earthly ministry.
It does, doesn't it? Like managing universal affairs in his downtime.
Wow. Talk about a demanding side gig.
Right. But meanwhile, back at the encampment, it seems the apostles were wrestling with some heavy questions of their own.
Like what?
Well, Thomas, always the inquisitive one, brings up something that has puzzled humanity for centuries.
Let me guess. The nature of evil.
You got it.
Yeah, that's a question that continues to haunt us. How did Jesus address that?
Well, he offered a very nuanced perspective. He distinguished between evil, sin, and iniquity.
3 different things.
Right.
I always thought they were basically the same.
It's easy to lump them together, but Jesus makes a clear distinction. Evil he described as inherent imperfection in the universe.
Inherent imperfection. You mean like a natural part of creation?
Exactly, like a built-in flaw that comes with an evolving universe. Sin, on the other hand, that's a conscious transgression.
Okay, so it's not just about being good or bad. It's about awareness and choice.
Exactly. Knowing what's right but choosing to do wrong.
And what about iniquity? Where does that fit in?
That's like digging your heels in and refusing to budge. It's persistent rebellion against what's considered divine will.
So it's more than just a single bad decision. It's a state of being, a hardening of the heart.
That's a good way to put it. Refusing to grow, to change, to align with a more divine way of being.
It adds another layer to our understanding of human behavior, that's for sure. And it kind of leads us to another age-old question. If there's a loving God, why is there so much suffering?
Ah, the age-old question. And wouldn't you know it, Nathanael brings up this very question to Jesus.
He was probably thinking about all the people seeking healing at the infirmary. Makes sense.
It's a question that resonates with everyone then and now. And Jesus, in his response, doesn't offer easy answers. He acknowledges the chaos caused by going against divine will.
You mean like humanity is still dealing with the consequences of those choices?
Precisely. But he also emphasizes our free will.
So much of our suffering is a direct result of choices we make,
Yeah.
individually and as a collective.
Exactly. It's a consequence of straying from divine law, those actions that disrupt the natural order, you know?
And that has a ripple effect, doesn't it? Like throwing a stone in a pond.
It's not about God directly punishing us, but more about experiencing the natural outcomes of our actions.
But it's not always our choices that lead to suffering, right? Sometimes bad things just happen.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just part of living in an imperfect world. Things break down, people get sick, natural disasters occur. It's a world still in progress, still moving towards something greater. It's a lot to process. Free will, imperfection, ripple effects. It really makes you think about the human experience, doesn't it?
Definitely. And it reminds me of the story of Job, a man who remained devoted to God but still experienced immense suffering.
Right, Job. It's a story that's resonated with people for centuries. And in this excerpt, John, one of the apostles, actually brings it up to Jesus.
He does.
It seems he's troubled by the idea that just being righteous doesn't shield you from pain.
I can see why that would be unsettling. So how does Jesus respond?
Well, he uses Job's story to challenge that very assumption.
Interesting. So it's not about finding easy answers about why bad things happen.
Not at all. It's more about how we find meaning and strength in the face of suffering.
Finding that connection that sees us through tough times.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes that connection, that faith, might be the only thing that keeps us going.
I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. But, challenging deeply held beliefs, even in the name of compassion, it often rubs people the wrong way.
Especially those in positions of power, like when Jesus healed that man with the withered hand on the Sabbath.
Oh yeah, that caused quite a stir.
Talk about challenging the status quo. You can practically feel the tension as Jesus calls the man forward, knowing the Pharisees are watching his every move.
They were just waiting for him to slip up, to break their precious Sabbath rules.
Right. And Jesus, fully aware of their intentions, uses this as a teaching moment. But he doesn't get bogged down in theological debate. He cuts straight to the heart of the matter with that simple question.
If your sheep fell into a pit on the Sabbath, would you pull it out?
Exactly. It was an act of mercy, common sense. And by asking that, he exposed how absurd their rigid rules were.
Compassion over legalism.
Exactly. And the crowd, they totally got it. They understood the message, the challenge to authority. And then right there in front of everyone, he heals the man.
A powerful display. And not just of healing, but of challenging the establishment in the name of compassion.
It's a message that's still relevant today. But, as we know, change isn't always easy, even when it's for the better.
True. And the text does mention that some people, especially those clinging to power, felt threatened. But amidst the resistance, there were those who were genuinely moved by what they saw.
Yeah, like those spies sent from Jerusalem.
What happened to them?
Well, the text says that 3 of them were so blown away by Jesus' teachings that they actually converted on the spot.
Wow, talk about a change of heart. Proof that even in the most unexpected places, change can take root.
And as these 5 months wind down, we see the evangelists going out into the world, each with their unique understanding of the teachings, ready to spread the word. It's an ending and a beginning all at once.
It really makes you think about everything we've discussed. The nature of suffering, balancing faith with reason, striving for a more just and compassionate world. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. And while we may not have all the answers, engaging with these questions, seeking deeper meaning, that's what really matters. It's about embracing the journey.
And continuing to learn and grow along the way.
Exactly. And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking those nuggets of truth that resonate with your soul.